They look like ordinary pieces of metal. But what if I told you, inside these coins hide untold stories, forgotten values, and unbelievable fortunes? These Eisenhower dollars, silent, shining relics of the past, carry mysteries worth thousands. Each one whispers a secret of time, emotion, and unimaginable worth. Stay with me, because what you're about to see will change how you look at every coin you ever hold. First up, the 1976 Eisenhower dollar coin. If you think it was just a coin, a simple, silver-toned piece of history, stamped in 1976 to celebrate America's 200 years of freedom. But you were wrong, so wrong. Because this coin, the 1976 Eisenhower dollar, hides something more powerful than money, more rare than gold. It holds the heartbeat of time itself. Close your eyes for a moment. Imagine the year 1976. Fireworks paint the skies, flags wave with pride, and people across America celebrate 2 centuries of independence. But as the cheers echo through the streets, deep inside the U.S. Mint, something extraordinary was being born, a coin that would soon become a legend. The Eisenhower dollar, named after Dwight D. Eisenhower, a man who led nations and shaped destinies. But this time wasn't just about honoring a leader. It was about freezing a moment of human pride, history, and hope into one shining circle of metal. The coin came in 2 versions, one for the public and one special, a silver-clad proof struck only for collectors. At first glance, they all looked the same, but hidden among them were a few that defied all odds. Some with errors so rare they seemed almost supernatural. Missing letters, doubled strikes, and mirrored fields that reflect light like frozen tears of time. Imagine holding one of those rare errors in your hand. A mistake, yes, but a perfect mistake worth thousands of dollars today. Collectors call it the Type 1 and Type 2 variety, each with a subtle difference in the lettering of the word America. And that tiny difference has changed lives. People have found these coins sitting quietly in old drawers, forgotten boxes, and dusty jars, not knowing they were holding a treasure that could pay for a dream. A single rare 1976 Eisenhower dollar has been auctioned for over $20,000. $20,000 for a coin most people spent on candy decades ago. But it's not just the price that shocks collectors. It's the emotion behind it. Because every Eisenhower dollar carries a piece of American spirit, the voice of soldiers who fought, families who prayed, and dreamers who built the land of freedom. It's not metal, it's memory. When you flip the coin, you see the majestic Liberty Bell and the moon, a symbol of how far humanity has come. A bell that once rang for independence, and a moon that once echoed human footsteps. Together, they remind us that freedom and dreams are never too far apart. But here's the part most people never knew. A handful of 1976 Eisenhower dollars were struck in 40% silver. Yes, real silver, a hidden layer of value few people realized even existed. These coins weren't meant for everyday pockets. They were meant for the collectors, the dreamers, the ones who believed in legacy. And decades later, they've become some of the most sought-after pieces of modern American history. Just imagine, someone, somewhere in 1976, received this coin as change from a store. They put it in their pocket, went home, and forgot about it. Years passed. The world changed. The person grew old. And in a small jar of coins, that single Eisenhower dollar still waited, untouched, unspoken, yet silently holding a fortune. One day, their grandchild finds it, wipes off the dust, searches online, and realizes that old coin is worth more than anyone could have imagined. That's not just money. That's destiny whispering through time. Even now, collectors search for the 1976 S-proof Eisenhower dollar, the ones with mirror-like surfaces so pure they reflect your soul. Their value depends on every tiny detail, the shine, the strike, the condition. A perfect proof, still sealed, can fetch hundreds or even thousands today. But there's more. In auctions, some of these coins, especially with the Type 2 reverse and silver composition, have stunned experts with prices beyond expectations. One recently sold for nearly $25,000, simply because it was flawless, untouched by time, unhandled by life. Just one perfect coin, one perfect story. And yet, beyond the numbers, there's something even more powerful: emotion. Because when you hold a 1976 Eisenhower dollar, you're not holding currency. You're holding a celebration of human achievement, of freedom, of the dream that never dies. It's the sound of fireworks frozen in metal, the reflection of moonlight on history's face, the echo of independence ringing once again through time. So next time you find an old Eisenhower dollar, don't just glance at it. Hold it. Feel it. Because you might be holding not just a coin, but a story, a legacy, a treasure that carries the voice of 1976, the voice of a nation reborn. And who knows, maybe your coin, the one sitting quietly in that box or drawer, might be worth more than you could ever imagine. The 1976 Eisenhower dollar, a coin born from celebration, built with pride, and now standing as a silent symbol of unimaginable worth. A reminder that sometimes the smallest things we forget become the most priceless memories we'll ever find. Next up is the 1978 Eisenhower dollar coin. They said the legend ended in 1978, but they didn't know this was the year the Eisenhower dollar took its final breath, and in that final breath, it left behind a legacy that would never die. 1978 wasn't just another date in a minting history. It was the last heartbeat of an era, the final echo of a coin that carried America's pride across a decade of change. This was the farewell coin, the last Eisenhower dollar ever minted before the torch was passed to a smaller, lighter coin, the Susan B. Anthony dollar. But little did the world know, the 1978 Eisenhower dollar would become the emotional goodbye letter of an entire generation of collectors. Hold it in your hand for a moment. It feels different, heavier, thicker, almost alive. The coin's surface reflects a nation standing between history and the future. Dwight D. Eisenhower's strong face still stares ahead, but somehow the 1978 version feels softer, older, wiser. Like it knows the end is near. The U.S. Mint didn't make any silver-clad versions this time, only copper-nickel. It was supposed to be cheaper, simpler, but fate had another plan. Because even without silver, even without special proofs, the 1978 Eisenhower dollar became rare in a different way. It became the final chapter, and collectors love nothing more than an ending with meaning. Every time someone discovers a 1978 Eisenhower dollar today, there's a whisper of nostalgia. It's not about the shine, it's about the feeling of holding the last of something pure, the end of an American icon. But there's another secret, hidden in plain sight. The Philadelphia Mint struck these coins without a mint mark. The Denver Mint stamped them with a tiny D. But only a few flawless D coins, struck perfectly, centered perfectly, have survived in pristine condition. And those few pieces, they've shocked collectors with prices beyond imagination. In 2023, a perfect 1978 D Eisenhower dollar graded MS, 67 plus sold for over $15,000. $15,000 for a coin that once clinked in soda machines and arcade games. Just think about that. How something so ordinary, so everyday, can become extraordinary when time wraps it in memory. But value isn't only in the auction rooms. It's an emotion. Because for the people who lived through the 1970s, the Eisenhower dollar wasn't just money. It was a piece of life, a sound, a touch, a memory. Parents flipped it to decide who'd get the last slice of pie. Kids saved it in piggy banks, dreaming of something bigger. Soldiers carried it overseas as a reminder of home. Now, decades later, every 1978 Eisenhower dollar feels like a time capsule, trapping laughter, love, and loss inside its cold metal heart. When you look at one under the light, you're not just seeing reflection, you're seeing ghosts of moments that mattered. And yet, there's one thing that truly shocks collectors. Despite being the last of its kind, the 1978 Eisenhower dollar was never celebrated the way it deserved. No big farewell, no grand tribute. just quietly minted and quietly forgotten. But that silence made it sacred, because forgotten things often become the rarest treasures of all. Collectors now chase these coins, especially the ones in mint state condition, sealed away for decades. Each grade, each scratch, each shine tells a story of survival. A coin untouched by human hands for nearly 50 years can now fetch hundreds or even thousands. It's like finding a frozen memory, untouched, untold, but priceless. Some say when you hold the 1978 Eisenhower dollar, you can feel its sadness, the sorrow of being the last, the echo of millions of coins that came before it, the sound of minting presses going silent after one final strike. It's not just metal. It's emotion pressed in copper and nickel. But here's the twist hidden in history. In 1978, a few experimental coins were struck to test the next generation of dollars. Among them were trial pieces with unique surface finishes, prototypes bridging the gap between Eisenhower and Susan B. Anthony. Those rare experimental pieces, found decades later, have fetched prices that collectors call unbelievable. Tens of thousands of dollars for a coin that was never meant to exist. It's as if the spirit of the Eisenhower dollar refused to fade away, as if it wanted to leave behind one final miracle. And today, when you look at the 1978 Eisenhower dollar, remember, it's not just the last of the line. It's a message from the past, whispering through time. Nothing truly ends when it's made with meaning. For the dreamers, the historians, the ones who still believe that beauty can be found in forgotten things. This coin is your proof. So when you see that bold face of Dwight D. Eisenhower staring back at you, look closer. Behind that steel gaze lies the story of every hand that held it, every life it touched, every dream it carried. 1978 was supposed to be an ending, but in truth, it became a beginning, the beginning of its immortality. The Eisenhower dollar may have stopped minting that year, but its story, its emotion, its worth continues to grow with every passing day. Because in the world of old coins, endings don't die. They become legends. And the 1978 Eisenhower dollar, it's not just a coin. It's a farewell kiss from history itself. Next up is the 1971 Eisenhower dollar coin. Before the legend could end, it had to begin. And it all began here in 1971, the very first Eisenhower dollar ever struck. The birth of a coin that would carry the weight of a nation's heart, its pride, its pain, and its dreams. When the presses thundered for the first time in 1971, the air inside the U.S. Mint trembled. Metal met metal, history met destiny, and a new symbol of America was born. It wasn't just another dollar. It was the first chapter of a legacy that would change coin collecting forever. They called it the Eisenhower dollar, a tribute to a man who wasn't just a president, but a hero. Dwight D. Eisenhower, the general who led Allied forces to victory in World War II, the leader who guided America through its post-war dawn. And now, his face would live forever, pressed in a metal, immortalized in silver and nickel. The year 1971 was emotional for another reason, too. Only 2 years earlier, the world watched in tears as astronauts stood on the moon. The dream of generations finally realized. And do you know what connects them? That same 1971 Eisenhower dollar. Its reverse design shows the majestic bald eagle landing on the moon, carrying an olive branch of peace. It's not just art. It's America itself, strength and peace, courage and hope, frozen together in shining metal. But behind that beauty hides a mystery, because not every 1971 Eisenhower dollar is the same. Some were struck in copper-nickel for circulation, but a precious few, were made in 40% silver at the San Francisco Mint. Those are the special ones, the ones that gleamed brighter, sounded clearer, and felt heavier, like they carried something sacred inside. Collectors call them the 1971 silver proofs. And those coins? They're worth far more than anyone could have imagined. A single perfect proof can reach $12,000 to $20,000 in high grade. And that's just the beginning. Because among these early strikes, there are errors, shocking, 1 in a million minting miracles. Coins struck on wrong planchets, like the 1971 Eisenhower dollar struck on a 40% silver planchet meant for proof coins. Some of these rare mistakes have sold for over $30,000 at auction. Yes, $30,000. For a coin once sitting unnoticed in an old coffee can or dusty jar. But it's not just about price, it's about emotion. Imagine the hands that first held these coins in 1971, veterans who once served under Eisenhower, parents who lived through the war, children who looked up to the stars and dreamed of the moon. Every single coin carried their stories, their hopes, their tears. And that's why collectors say the 1971 Eisenhower dollar has a soul. Because it wasn't made just to spend, it was made to remember. When you look at its details, you feel it. The sharp lettering, the proud eagle. The name Eisenhower carved with reverence. Even the sound it makes when it clinks is different, deeper, like an echo from history itself. But here's what makes it truly unimaginable. Some 1971 Eisenhower dollars were struck with prototype dies, experimental designs the mint never intended to release. A few of these escaped into circulation, and they look slightly different, the letters thinner, the relief softer, the fields smoother. And when experts find them, they call it a miracle of minting history. Each one of those prototypes has sold for tens of thousands, not just for rarity, but because they carry the DNA of creation itself, the beginning of everything. The 1971 Eisenhower dollar didn't just mark the start of a coin. It marked the beginning of a new chapter in American pride. It was the first large-sized dollar coin since the peace dollar of 1935. And when people saw it, they felt something again, that connection between their hands and their heritage. It was bold. It was heavy. It was American. Even today, when you pick up a 1971 Eisenhower dollar, you can feel that difference. It's not just metal. It's meaning, condensed into 22.68 grams of time. For many collectors, this coin is where it all begins. They start with this one. They learn its varieties. The 1971 D from Denver, the 1971 S silver proof, and the rare transitional errors. Each variety tells a story of change, of craftsmanship, of the unpredictable beauty of imperfection. And then there's the emotional side. Many people inherit these coins from fathers, from grandfathers, passed down with stories that still tremble in the heart. For some, it's not about selling it. It's about holding it, feeling that connection, that echo of love and legacy. One collector once said, "When I hold my father's 1971 Eisenhower dollar, I don't just see a coin. I see his smile, his strength, his history. That's a value no auction can measure. That's the real worth, not the market price, but the emotional fortune it carries." So yes, some 1971 Eisenhower dollars may sell for $10,000 or $30,000. But others? They're priceless because they hold stories you can't buy. And maybe that's the real message behind the first Eisenhower dollar. That sometimes the most valuable things aren't made of silver or gold. They're made of memory. So if you ever find a 1971 Eisenhower dollar in an old box, a forgotten drawer, a handful of change, don't just see a coin. See a beginning, the first breath of a legend, the heartbeat of history. Because this was where it all started. The very first Eisenhower dollar. A coin that carried not just value, but the soul of a generation. Next up is the 1976 Eisenhower dollar coin. The legacy lives on. Sometimes endings don't really end. Sometimes history circles back, whispering through time, reminding us that legends never truly die. And when you hold the 1976 Eisenhower dollar in your hand again, you realize it's not just a coin. It's the echo of a heartbeat that refuses to fade. We've seen where it began in 1971. We've watched it evolve through 1978. But now, here we stand, back in 1976, the year that burned brighter than all the rest. The Bicentennial year, the year America turned 200. A celebration that was more than fireworks and flags. It was a rebirth of pride, freedom, and unity. And right in the center of it all was this coin, the 1976 Eisenhower dollar, the coin that became the symbol of a nation's strength, its struggle, and its story. But this wasn't just a reissue, it was a reinvention. Because for the first time, the Eisenhower dollar wore a brand new face, a special dual date, 1776 to 1976. 2 centuries of American history, engraved forever in metal. On one side, President Eisenhower stands tall, strong, eternal. On the other, the Liberty Bell, cracking yet unbroken, overlapping the moon. Freedom and discovery ringing together. No other coin had ever carried such emotion. It wasn't just designed, it was crafted for meaning. Now imagine the moment this coin was first released. Families lined up at banks just to get one. Collectors held them with trembling hands. Kids begged their parents to save one, not to spend, but to remember. And as people across the country placed those coins in jars, boxes, or pockets, they didn't realize they were holding something that would one day become priceless. Because this coin, the 1976 Eisenhower dollar, would go on to shock the world. In its early days, it was just a dollar. But hidden among the millions were rare varieties, tiny details that turned simple coins into treasures. The Type 1 reverse, with its bold, thick lettering. The Type 2, with elegant, refined design. At first glance, no one noticed the difference. But for collectors, those small changes meant everything. A rare 1976 silver-proof, flawless, and mirror-bright has sold for over $25,000 at auction. And an error, a double die, a misstrike, or a proof on the wrong planchet can fetch tens of thousands more. Each one of these coins tells a story of chance, of mystery, of history caught in motion. But the real shock comes not from the value. It comes from the feeling. Because when you look at this coin, you're looking at America's reflection. A nation celebrating its 200th birthday, still learning, still growing, still dreaming. And in the middle of that dream stands a coin, a small, shining reminder of how far they had come. The Liberty Bell, cracked, yet never broken. The moon, a symbol of humanity's greatest leap. Together, they tell the story of endurance. The sound of freedom ringing through space and time. It's almost poetic, isn't it? That a simple dollar coin could carry the weight of 2 centuries. Joy, pain, triumph, loss, all in one design. But it does. And that's why people still chase it today. Not for money, but for memory. You see, for some people, this coin isn't about auctions or grades or mint marks. It's about the emotion it brings back. The smell of fireworks in 1976. The laughter of families celebrating together. The hope that the next 200 years would be even brighter. Collectors say that the 1976 Eisenhower dollar has a soul. And maybe they're right. Because when you hold one long enough, you feel something, a strange warmth, a silent pulse, a whisper that says, I was there when freedom turned 200. Some coins fade with time, their stories lost, their faces forgotten. But this one refuses to disappear. Because every 1976 Eisenhower dollar carries a message from the past. Freedom isn't free, it's forged. And for that reason, these coins are now hunted more than ever. Collectors search through rolls, boxes, and estate sales hoping to find that one perfect piece. The proof that survived untouched. The silver-clad version, shimmering like frozen light. Or the rare error coin, born by accident but destined for greatness. Each discovery feels like uncovering a time capsule. A spark from 1976 reigniting in 2025. And each one reminds us, the true value of a coin is not its metal, but its story. A coin that once bought a soda can now buy a car. A coin that once lay forgotten in a drawer can now make someone's future. But beyond that, it can touch hearts. Because it connects generations, the young collector and the old patriot, the dreamer and the historian. They all meet in the reflection of this coin. So when the world looks at the 1976 Eisenhower dollar, they don't just see a relic. They see a legacy, one that started with courage, lived through hope, and ended with immortality. Maybe that's why even after all these years, the Eisenhower dollar remains one of the most emotional coins in American history. It doesn't whisper about wealth, it shouts about meaning. And perhaps, somewhere in your home right now, there's one sitting quietly, waiting to be found, waiting to tell you its story. So pick it up, look at it closely, listen to its silence. Because sometimes, the smallest piece of metal can carry the loudest voice of all. This is not just a coin. It's a heartbeat of history, a mirror of freedom, a symbol of everything America stood for and still stands for today. The 1976 Eisenhower dollar, the coin that began as a celebration and became a legend, unimaginable, unbelievable, unforgettable.